We talk about applying AI on a global scale. I was told that this panel is more the social dimensions, and essentially, the question is, why will AI not be just good for commerce, but will lead to universal peace and happiness, sort of. So the first question that we have is, we have been asked to answer is, how will we ensure that the benefits of AI reach the society at a global scale? And I would like to break it in two. So the first thing is really, maybe each of you could tell me from your perspective, where do you see actually a social benefit of AI from the, let's say, perspective of your industry, right? Your company, so obviously your aim is to make money, which it should be, but where within your aim of making money you see positive, important social dimension of what you're doing? So maybe each of you could start with a short statement in this direction.
As the oldest in the group by company history, 172 years, and next month we have 120 years being active in Greece. I might say we changed our way of doing business. We had constantly to reinvent ourselves to be so old, to become so old. And we are in the meantime to be seen in the top 10 software companies as well. Siemens is one of the top 10 software companies by resources on software. There was a purpose behind. The purpose is to go with the time. If you stay back, we are out. And we have a complete new way of thinking, and we have a clear statement. We're here for society. The purpose is serve society, whatever the need is. And we go then with the new parameters. And in these terms, if I think on healthcare, on what we do in terms of technology to have a quick analytics on the health situation for patients, it's just amazing what's happening right now there and what will happen in the near future. Same with the whole industry, all the connectivities in big industries. You need to be with artificial intelligence there to connect and to analyze. Humans cannot do that anymore. Speed is of essence and reliability is very important. So AI can help us on that, and that's how you have to reinvent yourself to stay alive. If it's successful and if we survive as a company, every company in the world has a big question mark because the life cycle in new times is 7 years of a company.
So essentially what you're saying, which I would agree with, is that what is your goal, what would make you successful with your products will also have a very positive impact on society, because AI does, right? Is that
we focus on society in the meantime first and find solutions. And there's not one society. Society is divided in each region. As you have in Crete, it's a different society than in Saloniki and Athens. The same on a global scale. Chinese have a different needs than the Americans. And there are also different regional differences. So we have to focus on the segmentation, what is the need of society, and find solutions for the value of society.
So, Nektaria, what's your take?
Yes, thanks for the question. You mentioned how do we see it from our industry. So inside Nokia we have the, let's say, the pillar where we see how we can really improve ourselves and our solutions as a company and as an institution, also of R&D. We have Nokia Bell Labs that they are investigating what will happen in decades to come. But also how with our products we can improve the financial state and the economies of our customers. So in terms of lowering OPEX and increasing revenue. So this is where we see that AI and machine learning is coming in. We are trying first ourselves to make it a habit, make it something. We take it for granted that this is the way, so we try to inherit it first internally in our mentality, and then try to pass this on to the products and then to the customers themselves. And there, the reason that we do this is that we believe that artificial intelligence is all about not artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence, in the sense that we want to augment the human intelligence with the help of certain technology needs. And this is where we're aiming at. And this is where society is going to take the benefit out of in all the different sectors of industry. So if all the industries will eventually move into this direction of thinking with the principles of artificial intelligence and have it embedded in our lives, then we will see the outcome of the benefits of the society kicking in.
Yes, I think you really said something that I also feel strongly about. What is think about? It's more about augmented intelligence and artificial intelligence. Not about us wanting to create something that competes with us humans, but actually something that makes us better. And I think in many cases it's also a very technical challenge. So, John.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for the invitation here. IBM is a 100-years-old company. Therefore, in order to sustain such a long period of time, you need always to transform yourself and face the new challenges. IBM was one of the first companies that started working with artificial intelligence in the 90s with Deep Blue, which won the chess champion Garry Kasparov. Then in the 20s, we introduced IBM Watson, which initially we put it to face the worldwide champions in the game Jeopardy, which is a game of question where you get the speaker gives you the answer, and then the player has to come with the right question. And after we saw what the technology could do, we asked ourselves what will be the best industry to focus on. And the answer was that we should put this technology in healthcare. That's why in 2015 we created a new business division inside IBM called Watson Health, which its mission is to help, to give hope and help lives of people by bringing this kind of technology. Today, as we know, IBM is one of the leaders in artificial intelligence, but I believe that leadership is not only creating advanced technologies, but also being very responsible and have a focus on the society and how this technology reaches the society. Therefore, IBM, among other companies, Microsoft and other big companies in the area of AI, have introduced a set of principles that the European Union has adopted in order for the benefits of AI to reach globally and to reach everyone. And I will mention a couple of these, like that AI should benefit people and the planet by having sustained development, well-being, and inclusive growth. Also, the AI technology should respect the laws of the laws of human rights, of diversity, of and also include the proper safeguards that to ensure that the society adheres to these areas. Also, AI technology should be transparent, safe, and secure. And finally, the people and the organizations that are working or deploying AI technology should be held accountable to adhere to these for the proper functioning of these principles.
Okay, thank you. Vangelis, so
well,
Microsoft.
Thank you for inviting us. To be honest with you, I've been thinking a little bit about it, and we've been speaking in quite a few conferences. We also have our own big conference in May, the Microsoft Summit, where we dedicate it to artificial intelligence. We invite people all around the planet, and we have the discussion where AI is taking us. And sometimes I find it funny that I project myself 20 years later, when it will have happened and when we will have seen what will take place in the next few years. And then taking myself back to the present, where we see now that we're discussing about something we don't really know. So it's been around for 30 years. Most of you know it much better than I. But now it's becoming exponential. You know, the abundance of data, the cloud power, and the algorithms accelerated so much. Similar to the other companies, we feel the same. So we have this global committee and we discuss ethics because we have understood very early that if we start with the business sense in mind and looking after the extra revenues it will definitely bring, then we're doomed. Then, you know, we're dooming the planet. So we're taking a step back. We have recently heard that our committee rejected a couple of projects. So they were decided as probably not ethical, or at least not the way we want to go, and they were rejected. So it's good to see rejection of projects, like not yet, not now. We don't have the coverage. Yeah, this is what we feel. We feel the same, that it's going to take over our lives. We can joke about it. It's going to take the weather, so you will not have to wear your coat when it's sunny, because you will be reminded in the morning before you leave home. Or your diseases will be predicted, and it will help you with a better future for yourself and your children. But it has to be very, very well regulated. We're in discussions with the government. I'm sure you are, and I'm sure all of you are. The government is now open to opinions, so that's the way we're going, all of us.
Thank you. So coming back to the second part of the question was about the global thing. And all of you mentioned the ethics guidelines which all the companies have, and I believe actually they really believe in them. But of course the problem is, I'm sure that some of the things John was saying now, he would say it quite differently. This panel was taking place in China. So really the question is, as globally acting companies, where do you see the problems? How do you deal with this problem? When you talk about social good and ethics, it's extremely difficult to find it. There are some things that are obviously universal, like the wanting to be healthy. But the other things are not. So how do you deal with that, right? So do you just go everywhere and present a different place when you go somewhere, or how do you deal with that dimension? Just start from the other direction. So Vangelis,
So our CEO comes from India. His name is Satya Nadella. Probably most of you know him. So he was in a global conference, an internal one. He was speaking to us employees, and he wanted to admit the mistakes we make, at least at the beginning. So he had a large team dedicated to AI, to research, and it was a failure because, and I will not be ashamed to say, because it's a fact, we have published it, he asked to publish it, so he didn't recognize the color. It didn't recognize the light color versus the darker skin color, and it gave different results, when it was a white person or a colored person. And he said, when they presented to him this, and he said, look, they were all waiting for them to be fired because they failed the big first one. And he said, that's why the tab in the bathroom doesn't recognize my hands when I do that, because it has AI and doesn't recognize the color. So it was a good expression from a global leader to say, guys, hold on. We make mistakes. Please make it public. Please share this learning with the other companies. There is a global committee now where all the big companies participate, share our learnings, and go for that. And we need skilling. So that's when they decided, well, probably not from this joke, but they decided that we need skilling. So Microsoft invests so much money into skilling. They have skilling for business people, they have skilling for day-to-day people, they have skilling for companies, they have skilling for partners. We do a lot of that, and we intend to do much more on that, because if you get skilled, if you have a previous time skills, you will not be able to participate in the new era. You will be self-excluded. So skilling is the first answer, and we can go on and on. But
let me just continue. I think that brings us to the other questions about how do we include people. But my question was really about this. I'm involved very much on a European level with AI, and of course, there's a commission says, we have to develop European AI that adheres to European values, and some of this mentioned. And obviously, when you're acting globally, you have to understand that obviously different societies. I spent 2 months in China as a visiting scientist, and are not necessarily bad, they're just different, right? And they are competing. And so for me, it's interesting how a company deals with this on a strategic level when you speak especially about social good, because social good and ethics will be different in China, in the US, and in Europe. And obviously, you have to act and be an accepted player, all of them. And some companies had problems like this, right? Some of the things that, so when I was in China, for example, then Google search was banned, whereas Microsoft Bing was operating, adhering to the Chinese filters.
To me, it's very simple, and I guess I'm not the global leader, so but I will give you the opinion of how I feel and how I see the company operating. Very strong principles, very, very strong principles, and what I said before, the ability and the decision to say no. So when we see something that is not according to our standards, we just say no. And when we're saying that, well, the autonomous car, will it be good or bad? There's tons of research going on. And if we see that something needs to go back to the drawing board, then it goes back. So what we've been discussing internally is that it has to serve the people, it has to serve the communities. If not, then not. This is a very clear message we're given, and we're giving, externally. Very clear on.
John, your comments on that?
I agree. I agree with what he elaborated, that we also have to adhere on a set of principles. And again, ethics is a very big area, and that's why I mentioned before that these systems must be very transparent. So, and everyone knows from where the data are derived, how are they processed, and how are they consumed, and of course make the necessary changes in case it is needed.
Nektaria, just want to...
So from different global technology industry experts that I have heard, do we globally have different opinion of the benefits of electricity? I believe that there is a common ground where we all globally need to acknowledge where the benefits are going to come, and then the implementations of the principles, depending on our DNA, our society, our habits, then the implementation may be a bit different, but the framework can somehow be defined according to its countries, according to its regions. So for me, I see that if eventually we will reach a time point where AI, it will be taken for granted, it will be easy to use, it will be embedded in everything that can be automated, optimized, and controlled. We will not question the benefits, as we do not question the benefits of electricity anymore. But of course, the implementation of the new use cases on top of this technology will be somehow different. And I think these frameworks, it's up to the governments and the societies to very securely and controllable way define them.
So, Johann.
Well, I try to cover both sides. AI is like a tsunami. We cannot stop it. It's good. I would not want to have, again, an old city map to figure out where to drive. I just go Google Maps, click my destination, no matter where in this world, and I travel a lot around. And I'm, luckily enough, most of the times arrive where I want to go on time. So I would not like to miss that. That's part of our society already. So it's good. How you use that information then for other topics like advertising. If I driving here, the hotel, it will ask me how is the Royal Meridian Hotel, right? It works with that. If I don't want, I switch it off. So we also, I think, as the most global companies, we signed a Charter of Trust to work on this ethics, and absolutely agree with my other colleagues here. We always have the option to say no. If in some countries it moves in a direction we cannot stand for, then we will say no. We have to be ethical, and we have to serve the society and play with the rules in this country. Simple like that. And what Nektaria was saying just a second, with the electricity, yes, but the same with a knife. You know, we used, for how many decades and centuries, we use a knife. It's a weapon. But actually, the purpose is to cut something to make our life easier. Similar with the knife, it would be the same methodology and pattern.
Okay, so maybe
the companies don't have a choice in our times.
No,
with the globalization, everything is visible. There's nothing to hide. So if IBM or Microsoft or Siemens or Nokia Network, someone decide to do something wrong, they're doomed. They will disappear. You know, their stock price will drop the next day because there's nothing to hide.
So I agree with that. And before we come to the next point, so let me summarize. I see that you're very aware of it, and of course, my point was that the definition of wrong is very different wherever you go. And I see that you're very aware of it and careful in the way you're phrasing things, which I think is very okay. So let's come to something that is less, let's say, problematic and difficult, which was this question of how you ensure that the benefits, spread to other countries. It's this digital divide that doesn't appear between especially, poorer countries. And I would like to rephrase the question, because I've seen, and whatever fascinating, I've lived in Africa actually for quite a while, that, for example, mobile phone technology was something that did not create a divide. It actually helped to bridge this divide, right? Because it allowed those countries to leapfrog a technology of laying cables and empowered actually people. So my question is, do you actually see AI as being technology that actually has very strong potential to be empowering, or is it because we need a lot of data, we need a lot of computing power? It's something where it's much more difficult. Right? And I think about a mobile phone was you didn't need much. You needed a base station, and you needed cheap handsets, and you could really empower a community. So how do you see AI going there?
Well, the AI is a large spectrum. I don't talk about quantum technology. It's another. I'm not expert on that at all. Okay. But you mentioned in Africa, and I was living also quite long in Asia, right? So the technology, the benefits of technology to bridge social discrepancies, it's amazing. And you don't need always to have technology. And I recall in Africa, with the first phones, simple phones, the Nokia phones actually, the 3 series, they developed their own app or way of having a banking because there was no infrastructure for banks. So in the desert, nothing. So they had their own niche and developed their own adequate software to have transfers of money via phone, a simple phone, no smartphone yet. So there's a need in the society, and technology can help to bridge that without too much investment. In the end, it's up to each society and country what is the need, and there will be a customized fit of AI for that country, how it evolves along their future. There's not one fits all, but it's an option in the cloud, and you can just take it and apply it. And that's the beauty of AI. It's not, there's no boundary on that.
In principle, there is a philosophical, according to analysis investigations and also some feedback that we receive frequently from Nokia Bell Labs on analyzing the future, we see that the ICT technology is owing to the society a promise that has not been fulfilled yet. So we have seen in the past, up to 1950s, there was a peak of productivity because of the big disruption, which was electricity plus the first networks. And then when computer science came in, everybody thought, oh, now it's going to be the burst of economy, the growth, and everybody is going to be able to have a great quality of life. But in fact, there was a paradox. This never happened. The productivity started to drop. And we see now that the ability and what the AI can bring in the society, it can fulfill the second half of, let's say, revolution. We had the revolution of trying to make the network smarter, gather a lot of data, but applying AI on the data is the next step, and then we will see the changes in the economies, in governments, in banks, in manufacturing, and this will immediately bring the impact of not increasing the divide, but actually making it smaller, making more people in the society relevant for the new capabilities that this new technology will bring, and this is how we see it.
Yeah. With the evolution of cloud, now it's much easier to bring this kind of technology almost to every part of the world. So, to my opinion, I believe that in order to avoid having a divide between nations or different societies, is to build on the digital skills for tomorrow's workforce. So we have the technology, we have the proper skills, then we can have an equal share and equal benefit across the globe.
Well, a few years ago, I saw a picture of a lady living in Africa holding her mobile phone there, her smartphone. And I thought that there was a picture of a lady taking a selfie of herself. But if you double click, or actually, when I read below, it said that lady is taking a selfie of her eye, and then she's texting and she's sending the image to her doctor, and with some analysis, he's returning back the results, etc., etc. So sub-Saharan Africa, that didn't stand a chance a few years ago without that application, without the mobile, and without the knowledge that you can do that, send it, or send your blood, etc., etc. And then right now, Microsoft is working with doctors who just, with a little bag that they're traveling around and a little bit of an internet, they're conducting analysis in the middle of the desert. So they go to the small village, they take the blood test, they set up their little station, they're sending the data to the cloud, analyzing, giving it back. Now, who would have thought of it quite a few years ago? No one. So whether it's AI or new technology, it's definitely going to help. Now, it's the knife, it's the electricity that can kill you, it's AI that can hurt you, or it's AI that can save your life. So what we said before, again, strict rules, ethical rules that we, all of us, it could be IBM, it could be, Facebook, Google, all the other big companies doing the same. If we do that, we will save the world, we will make it a better place. So we feel very comfortable about that, Paul.
So I really like that example of this medical apps, because we also work with medical apps, and I think it's a really good example where people who may not have had access to a doctor now can have like this AI app doctor. And that brings me to one of the problems, and a question to you is that, of course, if you talk about in Europe to people from regulatory bodies about an app that gives you medical advice, they will chase you out of the room and put you in jail, in a way, because you say, you know, it's doctors, and doctors have to give them advice, and they are right. Doctors are better than the app. But in a place when you don't have a doctor, an app that is worse than a doctor is better than no doctor.
And he will not mind, or she will not mind GDPR.
So it's all right. You know, if you have a place where 100 people, 100% of people die of something, and you use the app to reduce to 50%, then it's good. But there's a question: do you see actually regulatory hurdles? You know, things that are where a lot of like GDPR, right? So it's very much suited to European problems. And do you see that there is regulation? Would be a message to lawmakers? What would need maybe to be done differently to ensure that this impact on outreach on AI in other countries happens? So do you see some problems, or what sort of encouragement would you like to see?
Starting this way around now?
Yes, always. You know, I try to be fair. You could start some different system, but no AI here.
Well, we were together with John a few days ago in a discussion with the American Chamber and some other companies about how the Greek government will legislate on AI, which is part of the AI4EU legislation that is coming up, etc., etc. So the discussion has already started, and this government seems to be very warm on that. Now, internally, what we learn, what we hear from the planet, is that, well, the Chinese people have solved it already quite a few years ago, because, you know, we will do AI, we will be the leader in AI in the next 10 years, and there's no discussion about it. Now, the Americans also see the benefit of the AI in business terms, and the Europeans discuss about it. So it's kind of, it sounds like a joke, but it's a reality, right? You know, China is one state, the US is, well, one government, central, and we've got 28 members who discuss, who have different opinions, etc., etc. And of course, we can debate further. But the train has left the station, and funds are coming in, discussions are happening. That's why this initiative that's coming up, people realize that no matter how much you need to discuss, yes, Europe is probably the most ethical continent of the rest. Ethical in terms of, I need to do it right. I need to consider everything before I hit the button. Probably yes, but the train has left the station, and no one can deny that. Otherwise, you know, it's very weird.
Yeah. Okay, as my colleague mentioned, in Europe there is a framework and a set of principles that they are trying to bring it as a European strategy around AI. Definitely there should be some kind of regulation in order for, you know, who produces the information, who consumes it, in what way, for what reason. So definitely there should be a set of principles around AI.
I agree. I mean, there are main principles. I think the regulators will have a really good job and work in the years to come. So it will be nice for them. There are main principles, as my colleague said. If we maintain them, I mean, AI is here for the human need. Is here to capture in a smart way, capture data, and then apply the right rules in the systems. Okay, so if we have these principles, and then if we go to the level of data of what we mean personal versus private, I mean, we'll reach a point where we should believe and we should know that not all personal data is private. So if we try to investigate the new definitions of data and how it can be used, then the regulators, I think, they will reach a point where we will create the frameworks that they can adapt per region. Of course, we said there are differences in the setup and the mentality, but I believe, yes, we will reach a point where it will be complete.
Want to comment on that as well, or
well,
everything said?
I have my own sentiments on that. As I have spent so many, over a decade in China, it was a shock for me coming back to Europe, because it took me 2.5 years to get used to the European way of thinking. They always see a problem, and they always talk about issues and regulation. And when you have been in Africa, you've been in China as well, see the benefit and have a vision and try to make the best out of it and fix the rest, and don't start to reinvent a regulation when it's already for 10 years existing in other countries and other continents. We are not anymore on a small island and we have a fence around. It's a global, the world is very small now, 12 hours and you're on the other side of the world. And you can call via Skype immediately, you see each other and you can touch things almost. Virtual reality will come soon on that. So my recommendation would be, let's not live in our villages, the chorio, where we always have in our mind our choreotic thinking sometimes, and we have to go on a global scale and say, how do others do it? What is their experience already, their learning curve? And let's try to adapt as quick as possible to get the benefits to our society. That would be for me a wish. And of course, there are other interests in why we need to be different. But in the end, bottom line is benefit for society. And the rest should follow and not make obstacles for nothing, just for lobbying something. Personal opinion.
I think it's a really good point. Often is the discussion where from politics tell to research companies to see it regulation not as a hurdle, but as an opportunity to develop something new, right? It poses, and I think you can reverse the argument also saying that from the social and like a regulatory point of view, we should see progress not as a potential danger, but as an opportunity that should bring something. And I think that is an important message that, you know, AI, like everything, is dangerous but opportunities. But speaking about this, I think in one of the previous sessions it was mentioned that, for example, in Greece, a lot of startups have issues with GDPR. And you know, my personal opinion on that is that GDPR, that something like this has been done, has been extremely important. But obviously, it's a regulation that's fairly old. So what would be things that you would like to, and obviously companies like Siemens and IBM can deal with any regulation because you have the resources, right? But it seems like small companies might have more problems. So what would be your thing? What would you like to see change in GDPR 2.0? And again, we're starting this direction now.
Well,
that's a good one.
we had a review recently, and somebody in Netherlands did a mistake with our global database to send out a newsletter. Instead of the localization of Netherlands, it was the world customer base. And we got a huge fine for that. Every new regulation, there are thoughts behind. We establish boundaries on regulation, and we have our learning curve. Okay, if we don't follow, you pay the price, and then we have to learn out of that. And gradually, the society, the companies will see what makes sense, what not. It's a starting point. GDPR is a starting point, and we have to evolve with that and go with the flow and see what makes sense by learning out of that. It's not written in stone forever. It's a starting point. And we have to see how we can optimize that by really touching things and seeing in the real life how it works. And again, GDPR, some say, oh, it's horrible, but others say it's good. And we are a society, there's not one voice, thanks God.
So what would you change? What would be your GDPR 2.0? You can influence it. What would you do differently?
I would bring more people together just to discuss about what is the experience and how we move on, and have reference with best practice sharings around the other world, and not be only local on that, and just share with the people and let them decide.
Nektaria.
Okay, I'm not a lawyer or an economist or an analyst expert to discuss GDPR design and definitions.
From a technologist
as
point
a
of view.
user, yes, and as a technology point of view, I would urge, let's say, the relative parties to think to redesign how to change the mentality of the users and the people to not be afraid to consent. I mean, we will consent on our data. Our data is our responsibility, and there is technology behind it to support the security of when saying, yes, I want to proceed and I want to have this data available. There is the technology behind to support the security of the processes. And so far in this era of GDPR, we are making consent to move forward and have an analysis of our data, and we believe this is our responsibility, and it's our fault if something happens. Yes, but still there is the support of the technology behind that you can do it, and you have to do it, and it's something that has to come out naturally and not as a big fear. This is what I believe.
John? Yes, definitely security is a very big part, and People should, I would see GDPR 2.0 in a state that the artificial intelligence system could take a decision for you that this is safe to give your data or not. So maybe we are not too far away from this.
It's okay, John. Give your data.
Vangelis?
Yes.
So actually, I'll come back again to this big event we do in May. So it gathers approximately 3,000 people at Niarchos the past couple of years. And when GDPR came, we had the event on the 22nd last year, and GDPR was out on the 18th, if I recall.
15.
So previous year we were lucky because it was just discussed, not there. This year we've got a lot of people taking internal care of making our life interesting with GDPR. So we got a note from our privacy lead in Europe saying, guys, you run this big event, and then you've got 3,000 people joining, so you cannot really have them pictured, or you have to ask them. So we start an endless discussion with this gentleman, Goettler, and says, Goettler, well, it's like, it's not a bad thing to take a general picture, yes, but what if the photographer comes closer? And, well, what he proposed, actually, after some back and forth, is that we have 2 pins. So it's like a green pin if it's a yes, or a red pin on the jacket if it's a no. Well, what if it's a lady? Well, how do we pin her? Okay, then anyway, and what if the green pin sits here, the red pin's there, and what if a red pin sits there? So we say, okay, photograph, now you duck. So all of those things are pretty, and we just agreed to do what now all companies do. We have at the entrance of the hall, we have a paper where someone says that I want to be photographed or not, and if not, then you just, I don't know, step out or you're not photographed. Imagine if I said I don't want to be photographed, so I would have to leave this panel. So technology will take care of that. GDPR 2.0. Yes, your data will be secure. Yes, it will be anonymized. Yes, it will be retrievable. So upon your request to delete it, we will retrieve it and delete it, because it will be able, technology, to recall your name, your face, and will bring the data to you, and we will smash it in front of you so that you feel safe. So it's probably exaggerating. It's a new law. It will take the time to evolve. GDPR 2.0 will come definitely in a few years, and therefore we have, to live by it, keep it, and keep improving it with our help.
Yeah. Out of that discussion, I think two things pop up. AI could help, as you mentioned, any QR code or color code. Automatically, AI could blur your face.
Will blur your face.
Automatically. No need to have any consent. It's automatically. Number 2, the future might be that you get money for providing your data for specific monitoring. That is a business model. You want to have a study on my behavior, you pay for that. So it's another source of income for the wide range of society. It's just a paradigm shift. We are in the starting point, and we will evolve from that.
Yeah, so I like that. It's very important what you said, because I believe that a lot of the very critical and sometimes, not being for a big company, I can say that overly critical attitude that also coded things at GDPR comes from the fact that in the beginning of the information age, of this digital age, a lot of the companies didn't realize how sensitive this is, and we're not transparent, right? Because the problem is, I don't think that anybody minds, if people use Bing, and you provide them a good service, they don't mind paying for the service with the data. The problem was that at the beginning they had the feeling that the data is collected, somebody earns a lot of money, and they get nothing in return, right? So I think it really is transparency in terms that if your data is used for somebody to earn money, then that is okay if you participate. Another thing I really liked you said in the question before was this, which I would feel is something for GDPR 2.0, was we have to realize that not all personal data is private. And I think that's a very, very important thing, right? In Germany, you always say anything that is personal data immediately starts the cascade of the whole thing becoming impossible to do. And I think this distinction between personal and private is a very important point. So, coming to the end, we come to the last question. I think a lot of you mentioned it already. Of course, when you talk about corporate responsibility with AI, it's against the outside world, but it's of course against the employees, right? And I think AI is changing. You use AI to improve processes. You have personal assistants to collect data. And recently, I was talking to German Deutsche Gewerkschaftsbund, people from HAP in unions. Very interesting to see how they realize that it's important, but how they are scared, how they don't know how to work with it. So, what is your approach to bringing AI to the workplace and, first of all, making sure that actually it benefits not just the company but the worker, but even more important, making sure that that is the way it is perceived, right? Because we live in a world where reality is secondary and perception is primary.
Well,
unfortunately.
Johann said before, it's a tsunami, you cannot stop it. We're discussing it a lot in the office, not only because we're reading the global documents, but also trying to find, what's the right thing to say to a customer, to ourselves, to our families when they ask. So at the beginning of the century, the 20th century, I think that, if I recall, there were 25 million horses living and working in the United States because, there were no cars, right? Then again, when the car came and it started growing, then all of those horses and the industry behind horses, those who fed the horses, those who take care of the horses, those who build the carriages, that industry went away, and then the car industry came, as an example. And then it grew and grew and grew. And then when the car came, at the beginning there were no signs on the shops, because you didn't have to have a big sign on your shop. Why? Because people were walking to your shop or were coming with their horse to your shop, so you didn't have signs. Now when the cars started driving fast, and then there were the big lanes and then the highways, that's when the need for signs, for bigger signs, came up, because it was fast and you have to catch the sign. So, one thing will bring to another. Yes, jobs will be becoming obsolete, and new jobs will be coming along. And we say that students now study, and probably they are not sure of what they will do when they finish, because maybe that becomes obsolete. So it's something that is happening. However, I was reading last night, just before coming here, that, okay, imagine you're with your family. So you go home, there are so many things to do. After quite a few hours of work, you feel tired, and you also need to think a few things and do a few things. What if you have some assistance to that, and then you spend some quality time with your family? So the machine will do, hopefully, the lower end part, the chores, the repetitive, and then someone else, will do something else for you, and then you get to spend, or relax at least, or spend time with your children. So it's going to be a new era. No one knows. If someone says that they know what's going to happen, we're probably lying, but we're assuming that it will be for the benefit.
My opinion is that AI technology should focus in areas of the society like healthcare, social care, human trafficking, education, in order to bring the most benefit to these areas. And these are areas that all major companies are putting efforts. And we believe that with the evolution also of cloud, that this is something that it's very easy and will have a huge impact.
Nektaria?
I think the colleague summarized it nicely. We see also from analysis, and we see how things are evolving, that yes, new skills, new jobs will be created. Of course, we need to pace the process of how to increase the digital skills being supported in the education institutions and so on. However, we see at the same time, probably now we somehow correlate the growth of the economy of a state, of a region, being on how high the salaries are. Maybe this is not going to be the future. The future is not, how we see it is not going to be about how high the salaries get, but how is the performance of the jobs, the job positions, the lower risk of the jobs, and the efficiency. Because AI is there, we see primarily focus on bringing the OPEX down, so on the product, the production, and the manufacturing and the operations, we'll bring it down. So that means that also services will be cheaper, and also the cost of good will be cheaper. So that means that we immediately have a benefit in the economy, in the growth. And at the same time, as Vangelis mentioned, we're going to have more time. If somebody else, an assistant, is doing something, we spend more time in our personal services, in our education, and so on. So this is the impact of welfare.
So, Johann, on the workers' rights.
workers' rights.
Or workers' benefit, let's say.
I can give you two examples. One is myself and one is in my office. The last, you know the office, you have seen it, the last 1.5 to 2 years I changed in our office everything to be hyper digital, modern, and feels like Starbucks and Google style. I'm not sure Microsoft style and IBM, but it feels really great and the people appreciate that. And bringing digitalization and take off the papers, making all digital, and they're connected to their phone and they can go anywhere. I gave them the freedom. You decide where you want to work. There's not need to be in the office. You have your kids in the morning to bring to school. Do it. It's your life. It's a good life-work balance. So they're more motivated, more happy, rather than, oh, how do I try the sick? Now winter comes, the AI is sick, whoever. You know, someone must take care. And AI, digitalization, can help everybody to take their ownership back in their hand and still have the duty, have their own life, and do their job, no matter what. Two examples which I'm really looking forward, and we collaborated with Adidas, which is a German company as well. We work on, and it exists already in some shops, you can walk in a shop, shoe shop, you walk there, and they measure how you walk, and you get out of the 3D printer your customized shoe. Not only for the orthopedic part, but also from a design part. You say, I would like to have here a star and there this and that, and you wait and you get it. More than 10 years ago, when I was still in China, in a village, you remember we said about a village of 7 million people? Still a village in China. I got a crown out of the 3D printer. I was waiting 1 hour. In Germany, it takes you 1 week until the lab is doing it. That's great. And the second thought, being in Greece now for a couple of years, I could imagine myself living on a sailing boat and working from there in a relaxed way and have some good work-life balance. AI enables us to do that. It's our choice in the end. And we have a choice. Before AI, you follow a routine and you have no choice. Now we have the options.
So I think, during the time, it's a very good closing statement, this vision of AI allowing us to work out of a boat in Greece. Which I think a lot of people actually appreciate, including the Greek government. So thank you very much for your insightful statements.
Thank you.
Thank you.